if you're on the debate stage, one-on-one versus Trump, he has a specific debating style, as everyone knows, of almost the cadence of a high school bully, the name calling, the degrading, but he's a very fierce debater and very successful debater too. I think it creates quite a spectacle. Do you have a strategy going one-on-one? If you were to get the Democratic nominee, how would you confront Trump on a one-on-one debate?
A Trump voter in the Midwest said to me that he can't wait for me to debate Donald Trump because he thinks that I would crush him. And the reason why he said this is that whereas Donald Trump's all bluster and spectacle, you're all facts and logic. I'm like ice to his fire.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the jokes, I was trying to imitate Trump, and I was like, Comrade Yang, go back to China, or something like that. And then, like it would just.
Comrade Gang, that's pretty good nickname.
Yeah, that's what we came up with as his nickname for me, because it's like a little racist and tries to make light of the socialist thing.
Right.
And why I say it, in other contexts, it's like it's not socialism, it's capitalism where income doesn't start at zero. But in a debate with Trump, it would just seem so ridiculous because I would just be there talking the facts, saying, look, here are the real problems. And some of the problems he called out and got a lot of credit for that. But I have real solutions, and people can pick up on that very, very quickly, where he's like, we're going to bring the jobs back. We're going to build a wall. It's like, I'm going to distribute the bounty and give you $1,000 a month. And I agree the problems are real.
Right.
The Democrats' response in the last cycle, he was like, we're going to bring the jobs back. We're going to build a wall. We're going to make America great again. And then the Democratic response was, America's already great.
Right.
And that is not what I'm saying. I'm saying
we have big trouble.
We have real problems, and we need to solve them as fast as possible. And one way to do it is by giving people a dividend of $1,000 a month to be a game changer for millions of families. So people can see through the bluster, and even a lot of people who voted for Donald Trump are tired of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What do you think the Democrats' big problem was against Trump? I know you touched on one issue of them kind of saying, hey, the status quo is actually good, is what they're saying. And as
what they were saying, yeah.
Most people know that's just, it's like, well, why do I feel this way then? Mm-hmm. But how is it possible that Hillary lost to Donald Trump? I mean, it seems unimaginable. It seemed unimaginable at the time. What were the fatal flaws of her campaign that you saw?
It was a relatively low number of swing voters in the swing states, Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. You have only 65,000 people in those states vote the other way, and then Donald Trump is not our president. There was almost certainly some degree of interference, and it's been documented that the Russian government has been trying to push our elections in particular ways, and that there are a lot of bots that are elevating certain types of online discussion. Mm-hmm. So there were a bunch of factors. But to me, the one thing the Democratic Party should be examining is why does so many Americans also not have much faith in the democratic solutions? No, and that's something that we can fix. We can say, look, if the American people aren't buying this set of solutions and proposals, like maybe we need to translate into something that'll actually touch people day to day that trusts people. Because one danger that Democrats get into is that they trust institutions more than people. It's like, how are we going to fix things? We're going to fix this institution, or we're going to send everyone to college. We're going to do these things. And then it's like, well, some of that will help some people, but more Americans would be excited about it if you put your confidence in them and you acted like we are all owners and shareholders of this democracy, like small d Democrat.
Nice. Okay, let's get to the heart of your campaign. The universal basic income, the freedom dividend, as you call it. You say it tested better with Republicans.
With the word freedom in it, yes.
Did you do, what is that? You did actual test, like focus groups?
Yeah, well, it was market sampling and online. So we tested a bunch of names: Social Security for all, universal basic income, obviously, opportunity dividend, prosperity dividend, freedom dividend was the clear winner.
It's a beautiful American phrase. I could see like the flag waving in the wind and the bald eagle screaming the freedom dividend.
Yeah, who could be against the freedom dividend? You'd have to be some kind of Jerk.
So, can you explain what universal basic income is for those people who don't know? Yeah.
Universal basic income is a policy where everyone in a society, in this case every U.S. citizen, gets a certain amount of money to meet your basic needs, no questions asked. So my proposal of freedom dividend would be $1,000 a month in the hands of every American adult starting at age 18 until the day you die, $12,000 a year. And this seems dramatic, but this has actually been proposed and almost passed in America any number of times over the years. Thomas Paine was for it at the founding of the country. Martin Luther King was fighting for it 1967 when he was assassinated in 1968. Milton Friedman and 1,000 economists endorsed it in the 70s. It passed the U.S. House of Representatives and the Congress twice in 71, so it came this close to being law. Yeah.
Wow.
What was the amount they were prepared to give out then?
It was about $12,000 a head.
Wow.
Yeah. And they even ran studies. If you can imagine a government that was so functional that they actually just started giving money to Americans just to see what would happen. The U.S. government did that in the 60s. They started giving people money and be like, oh, what's going on? And the data was very, very promising.
They did that?
Yeah, they did that.
What'd they do?
They picked random groups of Americans in New Jersey and Colorado and other parts of the country, just started giving them cash and then following them around to see what happened.
Really?
That's so interesting.
Yeah, can you
Did
imagine
other
a functional
Americans know
government
about
doing
that?
Yeah. I mean, this was
It's like a lottery?
this was all the rage in the sense that everyone thought this was a good idea. Again, 1,000 economists signed a study saying this would be great for America if we just guaranteed a certain amount of money for every American. We just passed Social Security. We just passed Medicare. And so the American people were looking around being like, hey, like maybe we can do some other great stuff. And Martin Luther King was saying like, we should do this. And then it was endorsed by a lot of people. And then it passed the U.S. House of Representatives. So during that time, Congress, when they were looking to pass it, they said, well, we should just give people money to see what happens.
And you said the results were good.
The results were really good.
So what happened?
So it passed the U.S. House of Representatives twice, and then it got stalled in the Senate because Democrats in the Senate wanted an even higher income threshold. I shit you not. And someone who worked in Democratic politics at that time said it was the biggest mistake we ever made. We should just sign that.
Oh my God.
And then the moment was lost, and then Nixon gets impeached, and then like the pendulum swings. You wind up with Reagan, and then the whole moment was lost. But it just gives you a sense of how mainstream this idea was. How it came this close to being law. It became a law in Alaska, and not that long afterwards in the early '80s. And so it's not like a far out idea, and that's one of the things that frustrates me is that now, I'm like the quote unquote futurist presidential candidate being like, oh, crazy $1,000 a month. It's like this was mainstream American political wisdom in the 60s and 70s. What the hell happened to us where now we think it's nuts? Like, it's like.
Well, now we need it even more than we did then, right?
Yes, now we actually need
Now it's
it.
a necessity.
And when you start thinking about it for a minute, like it becomes common sense. But like it gets caricatured in various ways, even though it actually, again, is like a deeply American and mainstream idea. And now, like Barack Obama came out and said we should talk about it. Elon Musk and like Zuckerberg and others are like we should totally do it. Like it's actually, in many ways, this conversation is definitely overdue. In my opinion, this should have been passed years ago.
Certainly an exciting time where your campaign is growing. It's resonating. I mean, what an exciting thing it would be for the United States.
Well, yeah, anyone watching this or listening to it, you can become part of the Yang Gang. It's a very cheap gang to join.
Yeah,
it's very
the cheapest
wholesome.
gang around.
The cheapest gang around. If you gave $27, you'd be an above average member of the gang.
Think of it as an investment.
Yeah,
you get $1,000
a month for life.
Yeah.
What's the return on $27 then? I can do the math. I'm very good at math. No, I can't do that math.
That's too complicated.
It's very high.
How would you get it? You just get a wire transfer every month to
it's
your bank?
opt-in. You sign in. You give them the way you want the money. Direct deposit into your account is preferable.
Whatever. What about someone who's making a lot of money? Is it a tax deduction, or it's money that you put in the account?
So it comes in your account, and you don't pay tax on it, but you pay money on your other income. Just so
you don't. Okay. How'd you get interested in UBI? When was there a moment where you're like, this is the solution? I mean,
So I ran this nonprofit that I'd started, Venture for America, that our job was to create American jobs. So we helped create about 3,000 American jobs over 7 years, and I got a bunch of medals and awards, and like everyone be like, "Oh, yay!" Like, well done. So during that time, I was obviously very interested in jobs and the future of work. So I would read various books about the future of work, and some of the books about the future of work were like, "Hey, guess what? Robots are coming, and we should really start looking into what that's going to mean."
Future of work is there's no work.
Yeah. And so a lot of them were saying we should do a universal basic income. And then when I read these books, I said, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. We should totally do that." and then in 2015, I read another book called Raising the Floor by a guy named Andy Stern, who used to run the biggest labor union in the U.S. And he said the future of labor is no labor, we're screwed, and we should move to a dividend. And so I read that and I was like, wow, it's not just the tech guys, it's the labor leader saying we need to do this. So I became convinced at that point and became very passionate about it during that period.
But I have some kind of abstract futurism
I love
questions
it.
for you.
Thank you.
As you are kind of, the candidate of the future.
I call myself a presentist. It's just the other politicians are behind.
That's a great
So
point.
true.
So we talk about AI taking jobs, but we're now when we talk about AI, I think we're talking about automated systems. But what I'm talking about is self-actualized AI, actual artificial intelligence.
AGI, like artificial general intelligence.
Yes.
Is what it's called generally.
with a with a sense of self-awareness
Yep.
and self-preservation. This is something that a lot of people think is not in the on the far horizon. So with an AI, you have this great potential and a great risk. I think, for example, an AI can crunch the numbers over. In 1 year, can crunch the numbers over thousands of years to find unsolvable problems or incurable diseases.
Yeah.
But at the same time, do you think that an AI of that magnitude poses any kind of threat to humanity and civilization?
I believe that we should not be overly concerned about artificial general intelligence just yet. Because when I talk to the foremost researchers in this space, they do not see a path from where we are now to artificial general intelligence.
They don't see that on the horizon.
No, they don't see the path. It would have to be like a whole series of breakthroughs and learnings. That right now we have machine learning algorithms that can solve an incredibly complex problem beyond any human intelligence, but they're essentially complete idiots and like 2-year-olds at anything that's not that problem. They're dumb. You can give them this enormous data set and they come up with brilliant correlations and insights, but they're not going to plug into Skynet and like threaten us anytime soon. What I'm more concerned about is dumb artificial intelligence getting rid of a lot of our jobs, which is going to happen much, much faster than the artificial general intelligence. To me, that's a back burner concern. I know there are some very, very smart people who disagree with me on this, with their concern. And they're right that these trends, this development can sometimes happen in explosively nonlinear ways. It's like, could be even while I'm having this conversation, there's some breakthrough going on that's changing it.
I think the problem is that by the nature of it, that once you do have one breakthrough, then the machine itself is capable of taking itself all the way immediately. Right?
Yeah. The folks I talk to believe we're still a ways away from AGI.
But theoretically,
after you get a rate of self-improvement, then it can go to infinity, and then you can get there very, very fast. Yeah.
And are you afraid of that, or are you? Is that something that? Certainly a tool for human advancement that's unparalleled, but a risk. Do you think?
It is a risk. There are real hazards associated with dumb AI. You can use it to cure cancer, but you could also use it to hack someone's infrastructure and make it inoperable. There are different things that are possible. So one of the things that I say to the folks, and I'm friendly with a lot of the techies, is that I want to be their partner as president, but I also want to have a technologist who's representing the public interest, who's in the vicinity, who's like, hey guys, maybe we should unplug this one for a little while until we
we have to kind
of
think about what a regulation on a.
And this is one of the most fundamental issues is like, if you're a technologist, you look up and be like, am I really going to let this dumb backwards government try and like regulate that seems like a disaster. Having some
Yeah.
bureaucrat in the room being like, "Don't do this," like most techies would want to throw themselves out a window if that was the situation. It's one reason why you need an actual technologist that the other technologists like actually respect
Right.
and like, who's just there being like, guys, like this is not a good idea right now. Like we should actually like pull back. It's a tough balance, but it's one we have to achieve as fast as possible. And the thing I'm excited about is a lot of the smartest techies in this space actually are open to it, and in some cases even welcome it, particularly if the government is willing to put resources to work to help us stay competitive with, let's call it China, who's plowing billions and billions into the computing infrastructure necessary to make their algorithms smarter. And even our richest companies are looking up saying, like, I don't know if we have those kind of resources. So that's the partnership that I'm looking to forge. And I'm friendly with some of the people that are already at the cutting edge of that.
With the way that you are running, it's pointing out, at least to me, the feeling that I get is how most of us really can agree on a lot of things, no matter on which side you are. And I think that's what it's going to take, because you need to be able to convince people who voted for Trump, and pointing out that there's so much wrong that we all need for all of us is the way for me to do it. And I see it with the way you're running.
You know, I'm happy to say I'm one of only 2 candidates, along with Bernie Sanders, that over 10% of Trump voters said they would vote for. And so with that, that's enough to win.